following program is brought to you in conjunction with the folks at Grace to All with Paul Gray. Now we bring to you the Agape Guy Show with your host, Lenny Manning. The following program has a voluntary rating of PG-13. This is due to discussions about taking one's own life. Viewer discretion is advised. We now return you to the program. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Agape Guy Show. I'm your host, Lenny Manning. Today I'm going to trade up positions for the day. I've had a friend as a guest on the show in the past, and he calls himself an anonymous follower of Jesus. At least that's who he lists as the author on the books he's written. Those books are Why I Had to Consider Universal Reconciliation and My Religion's Deconstruction Discoveries. Now, today my friend is going to take over as host of the show, and he's going to interview me about my book. My book was recently released on Amazon's website. The book is called Journal to a Journey. We'll put a QR code in the corner of the screen if you want to scan it so you can go to Amazon's website to look at the book. It's available in Kindle and as a print-on-demand paperback. So without further ado, here's today's host, and I'll call him Mr. Anonymous.
Ooh, hello again, and hello to everyone watching the show. Let's get right into the interview because I want to ask you some questions about your new book. The cover of the book lists the author as Mr. Anonymous, but in reality, we both agreed to use that name, or a variation of it. We collaborated on 2 other books and agreed to use that name. Could you tell the people watching the show why you used that name?
Well, I didn't want some of my detractors to look up my name on the internet and find this book and get angry with me. I don't want them to take the occasion to get verbally and psychologically abusive toward me. Well, let me read the preface of the book where I talk about this. Here's what I wrote. Quote, I have left my real name out of this book for a few reasons. One reason is that I don't want my name or reputation to distract from the main theme, which is God's love. I also wish to protect myself from abusive detractors. I would like to protect the privacy of people I mention in this book as well. Therefore, I've changed the names of the people mentioned in this book. End quote. I also didn't want anyone to show any angst toward my detractors because I want them to see God's love. I want them to learn about God's love for themselves. I want them to see that I didn't take vengeance against them and I didn't mention their real names in order to be vengeful toward them. I changed their names and my family members' names so I could protect them. The only reason I mentioned them was so I could give the details of my life to show my life story. I wanted to show what led me to learn about God's love and what's happened since that time. It can be difficult to help people understand my story if I don't give the big details of how my story unfolded. So that's why I mentioned those other folks in the book, and that's also why I kept my name anonymous.
That makes good sense. It's probably a good idea that you did it that way. It shows that you were trying to be kind-hearted to those other folks. Let me ask you another question that someone mentioned at your book release celebration. Have you ever had someone who was spiritually abusive toward you come back and admit that they were wrong?
Well, it has been extremely rare to see someone come back and admit that they were wrong. It's also been extremely rare to see someone who was willing to lay aside their emotions and examine the facts. Most folks seem like they aren't willing to look at it from an apologetic standpoint. So they're not really willing to look at the evidence to prove the case for one side or the other. I'd say that Out of a handful of church leaders that were spiritually abusive, none have ever apologized. I did have one friend who was a seminary graduate who either had a master's or a doctorate in theology. I can't remember if it was a master's or doctorate. Yet my seminary graduate friend thought I was dead wrong about my stance, and I sent him my rebuttal. I wrote a short 3-page thesis to give evidence for my stance that God was loving. I also showed in that essay that there was no possible way to balance God's love with anger or destructive forms of wrath or justice. Those things weren't God's nature, but I showed that in theology class that conservative Christian professors list love as God's nature, yet they never said anger or destructive forms of wrath or justice were God's nature. I sent my essay to my friend, and he contacted me a couple days later and was rather sheepish about it, and he apologized. He admitted 3 things to me in our conversation. He admitted he had never considered those things I wrote about. He also admitted that he couldn't refute it. He then told me that I was right about God being a loving God. So that one guy was the only person who ever looked at the evidence to come to a reasonable evaluation or a reasonable conclusion. I didn't even know much about God's love when I suffered from spiritual abuse from those church leaders several years ago. So I never told them about God's love because I didn't even know about it back then. Yet, even as I left those church groups, none of those folks apologized for their harsh attitudes and harsh words and harsh behavior. That's kind of unfortunate because it makes church leaders look arrogant and like they refuse to turn away from their own bad behaviors.
Wow. That's very sad and disheartening. Well, let's move on to another question about another topic you mentioned in your book. You mentioned in the book that you had a dream where a glowing person told you to leave a church you attended. You also mentioned that you had been to churches that believed in dreams from God, and other churches that didn't. Yet you also mentioned that you tried to take a step back and analyze the situation, so you could look at it from both perspectives. So, could you tell the people watching this show how you analyzed the dream, and what conclusions you drew from your analysis?
Well, that was a very thought-provoking situation. I had to consider a few things that I saw in the dream. I remember that dream you're referring to. That was the dream where a glowing person walked up behind me and basically told me to leave a church. They basically told me not to go back to the church I had been attending where the church leadership was abusive. As I awoke from the dream, I started thinking about it, and I tried to figure out how to react to the dream. I thought that if it was from God, I should respect what God had to say and follow his guidance. Then again, if it wasn't from God, I wondered what I should do. I then thought about the situation and remembered that this church had abusive leadership. So I figured that since the leadership was abusive, that it was probably a good idea to leave that church anyway. I figured that it's always a good idea to get away from abusive people. So it turned out that the answer to both potential perspectives was the same answer, which was that I should leave. It also turned out that the next church I attended was where people taught me in-depth details about God's love. I had never heard any in-depth teaching about God's love before that time. I also had a good amount of theological knowledge to discern if it was reasonable or reasonably true. I found their teaching to be reasonable and good. I also found that it helped my friends in their lives, and it seemed to be answering a lot of my difficult questions that I had. It also seemed to be helping me in my life as well. So I believe it was good and right on the mark. So that was basically, that was my basic thinking on the matter at the time.
Yeah, I think it was good that you tried to talk about it in a matter-of-fact way, and you were honest about it. I also think it's very significant that the next church you attended was where you learned about the depths of God's unconditional love. As for now, I'd like to change things around again, because I've got another good question. Could you tell the people watching the show the meanings behind the title and subtitle?
Yeah. The title and subtitle are an interesting case because it's like puns stacked on top of a bunch of more puns. I made the main title Journal to a Journey because I kept a lot of the dates and events typed on my computer. So it's almost like a diary or journal of big events in my life. I also use the word journey because my life seemed like a journey to learn about God's love. It's also been a long journey to learn about many other things that help me have a more mature perspective on life. Some of it was to have a more mature view of my own life, including my foibles and other people's foibles as well. I could also sense that I've been on a journey to have a more mature perspective on God. Now, the subtitle, My Life is More Than Wishes and Dreams, has a few meanings as well. I use the word wishes because I wished that I could see how to have a relationship with God like the prophets and the apostles in the Bible did. I was also wishing and hoping that I could see miracles like the people in the Bible did. I also wished that I could figure out what happened in prophets' lives that led them to have prophetic dreams. I was also wishing and hoping that God could make something great out of my life. So I was hoping and dreaming that I might have a better life someday. I used the word dreams and put a few different meanings into that as well. I was hoping, wishing, and dreaming that I might have a great life someday. Yet I was also hoping that I could have some prophetic types of dreams someday as well. Yet I wasn't sure if I believed that people had prophetic dreams these days or not. Then I started having these strange dreams. Then, when some of those dreams pointed me to go in a different direction with my life, I hoped I would have a better life. I then had the dream where I was told to leave one church and go to another. Then I ended up learning about the depths of God's love, and it dramatically changed my life for the better. That's when my life started to become more than mere wishes and dreams. It was a fulfillment of my wishes and dreams. There was a lot of ups and downs in the process, and there's still ups and downs, but I've changed for the better. That's for sure. When I gave my life over to God and His love, my friends said that they noticed a big change. They told me that I changed so much that it was like I wasn't the same person anymore. They said I had changed for the better, and it was very noticeable. I previously used theological talking points and stuff to basically talk down to almost everyone, but then I suddenly stopped doing that. I went even further and started to talk in a kind hearted manner to people. I had also previously hated to hug people, yet now I was perfectly okay with it. When people asked questions about life, I didn't quote a bunch of theological ideology to them. I talked to them about how much God loved them. So the journey, with all its ups and downs in life, is worth it. It can be painful to get or let go of some of those bad relationships and bad ideology that can lead us astray, but it's worth it. For all the maturity you gain, and when you gain an understanding of how much God loves you, it's obviously definitely worth it. You no longer need to live in fear that God is going to send you to the bad place. You no longer need to worry about if God is angry with you and is going to make bad things happen in your life. You'll see that God loves you with an unconditional love. So you don't need to worry about those other things. Uh, that takes a lot of pressure off of us, and we can relax and simply enjoy life. That type of freedom and joy you get from knowing you're loved is worth it all, worth all the difficulties you go in that you go through in that process.
Wow, the journey you've been on is just incredible. Let me ask you a bit of a tough question though. What would you say to some Christians who don't believe in these types of dreams, and don't believe they're from God?
Well, I'd start out by saying, I understand. I've attended some churches that didn't believe in this type of stuff and some that did. I tried to see things from both of those perspectives. I'd say that we also need to look at the fruit that it produces as well. Did my life become better or worse? Did it produce the fruit of the Spirit or the opposite? Uh, from what I can see and from what other people have told me, my life has definitely changed for the better. I'm less arrogant and obnoxious. I'm less dismissive of other people. People that knew me when I started learning about God's love have told me that it dramatically changed me for the better. I can also say that these types of dreams never revealed a God that told me to do bad things. For instance, God never told me to end my life. God never told me to walk up to a stranger and punch him in the face. God never told me to be unkind to people. I didn't have any glowing people walk up to me and tell me that there's no God or anything like that. So I'd say that I passed that hurdle as well. I'd also reiterate that the advice I got always seemed to turn out good, such as being told to leave a church where with abusive leadership, or being shown how God's love influences people. I've also been shown how a lack of understanding God's love negatively influences people. I also know there are many people who believe in miraculous things and many people that don't. So I've been friends with people on both sides of these views, and I understand their perspectives as well. I also know that some people point to seemingly fake stuff, and that's why they don't believe in this type of stuff, and I can understand that. I would also point out that there also seems to be a lot of situations where miraculous stuff seems to happen and it's legitimate. Yet a lot of the legitimate stuff is often done in humble ways, and it's usually done in private. Those miraculous things done in private can often escape the eyes of the skeptics and those who are looking for evidence. So I'd suggest that people keep an open heart and don't try to put God in a box that he can only do one thing. We should all remember that God can do whatever he wants in whatever way he sees fit. So if you think God can only act one way or cannot act that way ever again, you might get surprised one day. You might get surprised when you see the Bible says God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. You might get surprised when someone you prayed for ends up recovering from their health problems. Otherwise, why pray for people to recover if it's impossible for God to miraculously heal them? You might even get surprised someday when someone close to you has a prophetic dream and it turns out to be accurate or good advice. So I kind of understand, and I'm not looking to argue with anybody. I'm usually a quiet person and I don't like to talk about this stuff. I'm not a flashy person who talks about this stuff all the time. I also feel somewhat uncomfortable when stories get more exaggerated every time the person talks about it. I type the details of my dream to put them in ink, so that can't happen. If I exaggerate, people can always point to my book and say, "Oh, see, this is what you really said here. Are you exaggerating now, or which one's accurate?" So they can point it out. So I hope that would suffice, and I hope that's a reasonable enough answer to questions like that.
Hmm, that's really good. I like the way you put that. Uh, I don't know if we have much time left, so we might need to make this a two-part episode. Yet before we get to the end of the show, I'd like to get to one more thing. Please tell everyone about the situation where you wanted to end your life, but miraculous events kept stopping you.
Yeah, this is a story that, well, it almost makes me cry sometimes. It was a very sad situation where I was very depressed, yet it ended up turning into one of the greatest times in my life. Well, here's how it started. I had just left an abusive church group because I had a dream where a brightly glowing person told me to leave. There was a time that lasted a couple of months where I was visiting other sister churches. I wanted to find one close by and to see if there was a good one where I wouldn't suffer spiritual abuse again. I was extremely depressed because I didn't know if there was any good church groups around at all. I was also wondering if Christianity might be just a scam to control people and get money out of them. As I drove back and forth to work during the week, I kept wondering if I should end it all. I would sit in my car and start to make plans to end it all. I'd start to think of buying a weapon and where to purchase it. Then within 2 or 3 seconds, I would hear something on my car radio. It seemed like a high-pitched chime sound. If you know the song You Are a Child of Mine by Mark Schultz, that's what the beginning of the song sounds like. I would stop thinking about ending it all and I'd listen to the song. The song would soothe my nerves just enough to stop me from ending it all. A few days later, I'd start getting very depressed again, and the exact same song would come on the radio again. This same thing happened at least 10 times over a few months, and the exact same song kept coming on the radio every single time. It kept soothing my nerves every single one of those times. As I started to notice that the exact same song came on the radio, I saw it as a very mysterious trend. It almost seemed like one of those old mysterious television shows where mysterious stuff happens to people. It was almost like living in an episode of The Twilight Zone, yet it really did happen to me. As I learned about God's love, even when I got frustrated, I kept remembering that song. I knew God had something great in store for me. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I felt like I had something to look forward to. During that learning process, I had a incredibly difficult time learning about God's love. I felt like giving up several times, yet I would then remember that song and remember that God miraculously saved me from ending it all. I was sure God had a reason for keeping me alive, and it took me a while for me to figure it out, what that reason was, but I knew God had something good for me. So every time I think about that song, or if I hear that song, it stops me in my tracks and it really gets to my heart. It almost makes me cry sometimes. If you go on the internet, you can find the lyrics to that song and you can see how inspiring and uplifting it really is. Uh, I'd like to thank Mark Schultz for that song because it really did save my life. Hey, I got an idea. So at this point in the show, let's take a quick break and play a short video presentation of the book. Let's play that video right now. What would you do if you had a dream where a glowing person told you to leave the church you attended? What if you then ended up learning about God's unconditional love and it forever changed your life? Learn about these and other miraculous events that guided one man's life. Read the new book, Journal to a Journey, now available on Amazon.
Wow. I like that. I think I'm gonna need to get a copy of the book. How much is it, and what types of formats do you offer? Does it come as a paperback, Kindle, or both?
Well, the book can be purchased as a print-on-demand paperback or as a Kindle ebook. The paperback is $9.95 and the Kindle version is $7.95. That's also a good way to support this show. Plus, you get a book to read for your money. You know, we need to do part two of this interview. So all the folks watching should be on the lookout for part two of this interview. It should be coming soon. As for now, I believe that Mr. Anonymous and I would like to tell you folks that God loves you. God's love is unconditional and everlasting. You never need to worry about being good enough or if you've done enough good deeds. God still loves you. I'd recommend that you learn about God's love for yourselves. There are some legitimate free books on the internet that can help you with that. I know one is the book He Loves Me by Wayne Jacobson. You can find that on his website, lifestream.org. I can also say that in my book, I list a few books that helped me through the years as well. So if you can, just take the time to learn about God's love and then learn to relax into it like it's a big, comfortable bed. That way you can learn to relax and get rejuvenated. So I'm Lenny Manning, aka Mr. Anonymous, and I'm with my friend who also goes by the name Mr. Anonymous. He's listed on those other books as an anonymous follower of Jesus. So as my book says, I'm Mr. Anonymous, and I'm here with my friend, Mr. Anonymous.
Yeah, that's me. I'm Mr. Anonymous too.
We hope you have a great day, and we hope to see you in the next episode of the Agape Guy Show. Goodbye for now. Hi, folks. I just wanted to say a few things before we end the show. I'd like to tell everybody that I'm testing out a new song that might end up as the show's theme song. I'll play it here at the end of the show as the credits roll up the screen. This is a song I'm using by permission, and it's by a person that some of you might recognize. The song is titled Banking Everything on Love, and it's by Wendy Francisco. I'll also be putting up a couple of QR codes on the sides of the screen along with the credits. One QR code is the link if you want to go see my book on Amazon's website. The other is if you wish to donate to my PayPal account to support this show. It doesn't cost anything to watch this show, but I could use the help since it takes a lot of work to put this show together. I sure could use the help so I can bring you more episodes of the show. I'm constantly trying to improve the quality of the show with extensive editing, graphics, sound quality, and some upgrades to my equipment. This show, in my opinion, is a fulfillment of more dreams I've had, such as dreams where I was telling people from other countries about God's love. I want to continue telling people about God's love and let that love heal people's hearts and minds. Maybe, as a friend told me, it can bring about the butterfly effect and God's love can spread all over the world. Perhaps it'll be just as irresistible as a black hole singularity that draws everything into it. I hope you get to know God's love so good that it permeates every bit of your life, just like water in a sponge. As for now, I'm Lenny Manning, and I hope to see you later. Goodbye for now.
I'm banking everything on love. I'm banking everything on love. I see the flags unfurl and they're blowing the other way. I see the anchor rising and the ship moving